The government wastes a lot of your money on a regular basis, but here are some examples in Afghanistan that are beyond the pale. What's in the news with stories on good news for Ross Ulbricht, civilians killed by the U.S. government, and 3 separate city governments banning employee cafeterias, banning plastic straws, and tearing down a 91-year-old woman's wheelchair ramp. Also, an Ancap Apps segment on one of the best charity apps around, DonorSee. This episode is brought to you by ZenCash, a cryptocurrency that infuses privacy, anonymity, and security done right. Also brought to you by Free Talk Live, providing you with fresh, pro-liberty content 7 days a week on more than 180 radio stations across the country.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. From the state that is the home of Squam Lake, the location of the filming of the movie On Golden Pond, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at The Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 99, Government Waste, and it's Tuesday, July 31st, 2018, when there have already been more than 620 people killed by police this year, and the United States debt clock shows us at more than $21,294,130 million in debt. What's rustling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. We all know that there is a ton of government waste, especially since the money is not really theirs, only our money that was stolen from us at gunpoint. Since it's not their money, they don't really give a shit much about how they use it. However, when there comes out a story about such blatant government waste as this, I would be remiss to not talk about it. Apparently, Congress has appropriated $126 billion for Afghanistan reconstruction since fiscal year 2002, said Special Inspector General John F. Sopko in testimony delivered in May to the Senate Subcommittee on Federal Spending Oversight and Emergency Management. By 2014, though, he added, inflation-adjusted appropriations for that purpose had already exceeded the total of U.S. aid committed to the Marshall Plan for rebuilding much of Europe after World War II. So much money spent so fast invariably generates many examples of projects poorly or wastefully executed, of course. Afghanistan reconstruction is no exception, as the ongoing work of Sopko's Office of the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, SIGAR, makes clear. This report showed a ton of uses and abuses of this money, our money, but there are some here that require special attention due to the sheer ignorance of them. The U.S.-funded Task Force for Business and Stability Operations, TFBSO, spent nearly $43 million to construct a compressed natural gas, CNG, automobile filling station in the city of Shahburgan, Afghanistan. Now, a similar station in Pakistan only cost about $500,000 to construct, not $43 million, making the Afghan counterpart some 86 times more expensive. Yet, the Department of Defense was unable to provide an explanation for the high cost of the project or to answer any questions concerning its planning, implementation, or even the outcome. Now, those who decided to spend those millions didn't seem to realize that Afghanistan lacks the natural gas transmission and local distribution infrastructure necessary to even support a viable market for CNG vehicles, or that the cost of converting a gas-powered car to run on CNG is prohibitive for the average Afghan. In other words, the chances of there being any CNG vehicles in Afghanistan are slim to fucking none. But at least there's now a CNG filling station for all of those imaginary cars. SIGAR also reported that U.S. Central Command had, in 2012, constructed a dry fire range in Wardak Province for the Afghan Special Police Training Center at a cost of nearly $500,000. Within 4 months of completion, this dry fire range began to disintegrate. The report explains that these melting buildings were the direct result of the construction contractor using substandard bricks and other building materials. Unsurprisingly, this problem was compounded by poor oversight on the part of the responsible U.S. government officials. The incompetent contractor was paid in full, a total of $457,000, even though the range was not constructed according to contract requirements, and as a result, water penetration caused its walls to quickly fall apart. Only after the range was finished and paid for did an inspector actually realize that the facility is completely unsafe. It appears the contractor intentionally used different materials and construction standards to cut costs and defraud the government. And to defraud us, let's be honest. Next up is the uninhabited and uninhabitable $60 million Marriott Hotel Complex. 11 years after a plan for a Marriott Hotel Complex in Kabul was launched with $60 million from the U.S. government's Overseas Private Investment Corporation, Sergio Gore, Chief of Staff to Senator Rand Paul, who chaired the May hearings on Afghanistan reconstruction waste, visited the site. "I walked the halls of this deserted, unfinished shell of a dream," he said. The structure featured barren rooms, empty elevator shafts, and no electric power at all. Despite being abandoned, the would-be Marriott remains a drain on U.S. funds even today. Our government now spends an unknown amount every week to protect these multi-story buildings because of how close they are to America's embassy. Gore says, "The failed hotel structure now requires 24/7 security both from us and Afghan security services. Its proximity to our embassy makes it a very dangerous building. If left unattended, it could be used to orchestrate attacks and launch rocket-propelled grenades at U.S. personnel." People on the ground told Gore that the embassy was seeking to acquire the land, demolish the infrastructure, and start anew, and just piss away $60 million. Sigar also writes of a huge U.S.-funded electrification project known as the Northeast Power System Phase 3. It was a project of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers whose mismanagement of the contract has resulted in the U.S. government spending almost $60 million on a power transmission project that is not operational because land acquisition and right-of-way issues have not been resolved, and because there was never even a contract provision to permanently connect the system to a power source, for crying out loud. Sigar reports that it's unclear whether the system will function as designed because it cannot even be tested. But that's not all. In addition to finding no signs the project is capable of actually providing electricity, Sigar found 3 of the 18 transmission towers it inspected are on embankments of loose soil and without retaining walls. And several of the tower foundations exhibited faulty workmanship like exposed rebar, and they have started to crumble. The report concluded that the NEPS 3 system may be structurally unsound and pose a risk to Afghans who live near transmission towers and lines. Also, the U.S. has spent around $8 billion specifically to eradicate opium poppies in Afghanistan since the U.S. invasion. $8 billion. And as Sigar reports, from 2008 through March 20th, 2018, over 3,520 interdiction operations have resulted in the seizure of almost 500,000 tons of opium. Now that might sound impressive, but all those seizures amount to just 5% of the opium produced in Afghanistan in 2017 alone. There are many other instances of hundreds of millions of dollars or more wasted in Afghanistan reconstruction alone in this report, including the $28 million spent on a very expensive proprietary camouflage pattern that was purchased because some general liked it, instead of its effectiveness, since the camo was designed for a woodland setting. Now, I'm not 100% positive, but I don't think there's a ton of wooded areas in Afghanistan for some fucking reason. As a matter of fact, the pattern was so poor for Afghanistan that it actually made soldiers wearing it a more visible target to the enemy. As long as our money is stolen from us at gunpoint to be used at the whim of some fucking bureaucrat, there is going to be waste and fraud and immoral uses of our money. This is why I say it is so important to keep as much of your money from the government as you can, by protecting some of your money from taxation as much as possible, or by using cryptocurrencies as much as possible. Keep your money out of the hands of murderers, thieves, and gangsters.
It's time to shake up your podcast feed, folks, by subscribing to Lions of Liberty, the only libertarian variety show out there. Spend Mondays with me, Mark Claire, as I feature in-depth interviews with great names in the libertarian community and fun roundtable discussions.
Electric Liberty Land with me, Brian McWilliams, every Wednesday, your weekly dose of comedy, culture, and liberty.
And Felony Fridays with me, John Odermatt, where I expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and at lionsofliberty.com.
Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In some good news, a U.S. attorney for the District of Maryland has filed a motion to dismiss pending charges against Ross Ulbricht, otherwise known as Dread Pirate Roberts, who is serving a life sentence following his conviction for his role in the Silk Road marketplace, which facilitated the sale of supposedly illegal drugs. The motion to drop the indictment and superseding indictment for pending charges was filed by attorney Robert Herr, who noted that Ulbricht's sentence and conviction have been affirmed on appeal and that the Supreme Court has denied any appeals. The pending charges in Maryland included the allegation that Ulbricht tried to hire a hitman to commit murder, charges that Ulbricht claimed influenced the judge to give him an unreasonably harsh sentence. Clearly, these additional charges were trumped up just to sway the judge and the jury against Ross, especially since these charges were discussed in the trial, even though they were never actually tried against him. It's good to see these charges finally dropped, since there never was enough evidence that these things ever happened to try him for him in the first place. In Government is Evil news, U.S. airstrikes have killed 14 civilians in northern Afghanistan. Local Afghan officials reported more than 10 civilians were killed in a Kunduz airstrike. At the time, they claimed it was an Afghan airstrike, not a U.S. airstrike, but it turns out that that was untrue, and officials are now confirming that the strike killed 14 and that it was a U.S. airstrike. The U.S. is struggling to shift the narrative on what happened, and now they say that the family of 14 killed, which included small children, including a 3-year-old girl, were all Taliban fighters, and that no civilians were killed. Taliban fighters, a 3-year-old girl. Fuck the U.S. military in the neck with an airstrike. Local officials reiterated that everyone killed was civilians. The Kunduz governor's office has promised an investigation and quoted local elders as saying none of the slain were armed at all, let alone Taliban fighters. They confirmed that some Afghan civilians were killed and wounded. Last year, civilian casualties caused by U.S. and Afghan airstrikes soared more than 50% from 2016 levels. The United Nations found that airstrike casualties jumped another 52% in the first 6 months of 2018 alone, with 149 civilians killed and another 204 injured. This spike in what the U.S. military has long called collateral damage, or in early Iraq war parlance, bug splat, I shit you not, follows a campaign pledge by Donald Trump to bomb the shit out of Islamic terrorists and kill their innocent families. Once in office, Trump loosened rules of engagement meant to protect civilian lives, leading to even more innocent deaths. And sadly, this is a growing trend in Afghanistan due to the rise in bombings there. New data from U.S. Air Force Central Command once again confirms a trend of escalating U.S. airstrikes against targets inside Afghanistan. The data shows 2,911 munitions have been dropped in Afghanistan so far in 2018 alone. That's a lot. The 2,911 is not only a substantial increase from this time in 2017, but also would be higher than any other year since Central Command started keeping track of munitions dropped back in 2013. All indications are that the escalation of strikes in Afghanistan is likely to continue, despite the Taliban controlling more territory now than at any time since 2001. Officials say that a strategy review may be upcoming, though they also say big changes are very unlikely. And it's not just in Afghanistan that they're killing civilians in our names. U.S.-led coalition airstrikes targeting Islamic State militants have killed at least 73 Syrian civilians during the month of July alone, with most of those deaths occurring in 2 strikes in Deir Ezzor province, according to Monitor and media organizations. Air Wars estimates a minimum of 6,488 men, women, and children have been killed by U.S.-led coalition air and artillery strikes since August 2014, when former U.S. President Barack Obama entered the Syrian civil war to fight ISIS. In the wider war against Islamic terrorism, which is now in its 17th year with no end in sight, credible estimates of the number of civilians killed range from hundreds of thousands to over 1.3 million. Since the nuclear war waged against Japan in 1945, the United States has killed more foreign civilians than any other armed force in the world, by a huge margin. Stop giving these people money, and stop giving these people legitimacy. One cryptocurrency project that I'm most excited about right now is ZenCash, with privacy, anonymity, and security done right. You can read all about ZenCash at thelavaflow.com/zen. Now look, I've read a ton of white papers on crypto, and this is the first one I've read that mentioned voluntary and voluntarist not once but 7 times. These are our people, and they are on the right track to mix great technology, excellent marketing, and awesome uses for their product. These guys get it, and they understand what crypto is all about. Now this is a project, guys, that I believe in 100%. So much so that I have staked some of my own Zen to run a secure node on their network. So don't miss out on checking out this awesome project at thelavaflow.com/zen. In government protectionism news, in an attempt to attract employees to local restaurants and businesses, San Francisco supervisors Asha Safai and Aaron Peskin are co-sponsoring an ordinance that would ban employee cafeterias from new office buildings in the city. This comes as local retailers, particularly those downtown, complain of a drop in business as more companies offer their workers meals in private corporate cafeterias, Safai said. An employee cafeteria is defined in the San Francisco Health Code as a space inside an office where employees are provided or sold tax-free food on a regular basis. These facilities are either operated by company employees or contractors. There are currently 51 such cafeterias around the city, Safai said. The supervisor's proposal would put the city at odds with the tech industry, which largely views free food as an essential perk to lure talent. Companies like Google, Facebook, and Square have full-blown cafeterias where employees are provided with everything from fresh-made omelets to hand-rolled sushi. While some make it a point to source their food from local companies, Safai said that wouldn't matter under this proposal. He said, "This is also about a cultural shift. We don't want employees biking or driving into their office, staying there all day long, and going home. This is about getting people out of their office, interacting with the community, and adding to the vibrancy of the community." Given how ingrained employee cafeterias have become in modern tech company culture, Peskin said he is aware that this proposal may be controversial. But he said this is a groundbreaking piece of legislation that will benefit the restaurant industry and city overall. He said, "The historic model is that people would go to work and then flow outside during lunch, and in recent times it has been much more inward-facing, where companies don't want their workers to leave. The idea here is to bolster not only the restaurant business, but other ground-floor retail businesses that are suffering." This is nothing more than protectionism. Restaurants in the area are clearly not providing enough value for people to leave their workplaces to go visit their establishment. Is competing with free or discounted food tough? Sure it is, but there are many ways to create value. There's a reason many people will choose to go to nicer, more expensive restaurants over cheaper places. It's because people perceive value there. The interesting part of this is that the San Fran supervisors involved are not even trying to hide the fact that this is pure protectionism. They are open and blatant about it. How disgusting that people actually consider giving government thugs like this the time of day. In other California liberal insanity news, the city of Santa Barbara, California has passed an ordinance that will allow restaurant employees to be punished with up to 6 months of jail time, or a $1,000 fine after a second offense of giving plastic straws to their customers. This bill was passed unanimously last Tuesday and covers bars, restaurants, and other food service businesses. Establishments will still be allowed to hand out plastic stirrers, but only if customers request them. Santa Barbara's ordinance is likely the most severe straw ban in the country, but it's far from the only straw ban. Seattle banned plastic straws earlier this month, mandating a $250 fine for violators. Santa Barbara, however, has gone much further than Seattle, even aside from the harsher punishments its law imposes. Santa Barbara has banned not only plastic straws, but also compostable straws. Oh, and each individual straw counts as a separate infraction, meaning that if someone got busted handing out straws to a table of 4 people, he or she can end up facing years behind bars. As Reason notes, straws represent only 0.02% of the amount of plastic waste that is estimated to go into the ocean each year. What's more, the United States is responsible for only about 1% of the total amount of plastic waste that's in the ocean overall. All things considered, this new ordinance isn't going to be making a real dent in the problem it's intended to solve, but it could create lots of harm. As Reason explains, straw bans could end up having a negative impact on disabled people who can't drink without them. This is nothing more than a feel-good measure with no zero real positive impact. Typical from a bunch of liberal bureaucrats. Now, I have absolutely no problem with individual businesses making the decision on their own to stop using plastic straws. But getting the government involved, with their guns, in what people choose to drink liquids out of seems like a bit of a stretch. And sending people to jail over it is just plain asinine and criminal.
One of the largest reaching Liberty programs today is Free Talk Live, with a 3-hour radio program 7 nights a week on more than 180 radio stations across the country. They are so influential on talk radio that they are the number 27 radio program in the country, according to Talkers Magazine. They also have a daily podcast that's been voted Best Political Podcast 5 times by podcastawards.com. The hosts of Free Talk Live are street preachers for the ideas of liberty. They take the message of peace, liberty, and cryptocurrency to the masses on the radio, where they are not preaching to the choir. You can listen via podcast or live via audio streaming or the Twitch or YouTube channels at freetalklive.com. I listen to their podcast myself every single morning when I get up to get a fresh perspective on news and very, very strong libertarian perspectives. Make sure to add them to your feed at freetalklive.com. In more evil government news, Prince George's County, Maryland filed a legal case against a Laurel couple in their 90s over a wheelchair ramp at their own home. To avoid legal trouble, the elderly couple's son tore down the ramp, trapping the woman in her own home. The county permitting department said the family had no permit to build a wheelchair ramp in front of their own home. Who gives a shit? Evelyn's son Bob built the ramp. He's in the construction trades. He didn't want his parents to have to pay the $5,000 that they priced a ramp of this size, so Bob bought $1,700 of lumber and built it himself. Then a Prince George's County inspector came. Son Bob said, "There was an inspector that showed up here twice when I was here, and I asked him why couldn't he just inspect it and tell me if there was anything I needed to do to make any improvements on it so that it would fit permitting requirements. But he said that wasn't the process, and I had to go through the long route, of course." Bob submitted plans and tried to file for a permit but was denied because he built the ramp before asking county government's permission. Prince George's County mailed an order to the parents demanding that they show up in court May 16th. The county sought compliance with their building codes. The order warned in bold letters, "If you fail to comply with such default order, you may be subject to fines or imprisonment or both for contempt of court." What the actual fuck? I mean, this is just ludicrous. This is not about keeping anyone safe. This is not about protecting anyone. This is about pure power and authority, plain and fucking simple. Respect my authority. No, fuck your authority. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Ancap Apps.
I talk a lot about putting your money where your mouth is. Private charity is one way that we can do that by showing it is much more efficient and effective than government charity funded at the point of a gun. DonorSee is a charity that actually allows you to watch quickly and easily the impact of your money on charity. When you select a charity to support on the site at DonorSee.com, you will receive text and video updates on how your money is actually impacting the people, all directly on their website or on the application. As they say, it's not enough to just send you video updates. We want to make sure your money is actually helping those in need, effectively, sustainably, and transparently. When you give on DonorSee, 90% of your money goes to help those in need, and the remaining is what we use to keep our platform up and running. On average, DonorSee gets 3.75% per transaction to run the business. Also, in case you're wondering, our CEO earns a salary of $0 per year. Now talk about a charity that puts its money to good use. This charity got its start after CEO Greg Glyer spent 3 years living in Malawi, Africa, where he learned firsthand the lack of impact that charity was making. After founding and running his own charity in 2013, he decided to flip the charity model on its head by creating DonorSee. DonorSee was launched just a week after Glyer finished building a 100% sustainable all-girls school in a rural Malawian village. Now, my wife and I have given to this charity on several occasions now, and it is as easy as it gets. You go to their site at DonorSee.com or their phone application and scroll through their list of charities. When one of those charities speaks to you or you find one particularly compelling, you hit the Give button and put in a dollar amount. Each charity shows exactly what the charity is for, how much the total cost of that charity is, and how much money is left to completely fund that charity. And you can give as much as you want or as little as you want. Once you hit Give, you then put in your credit card information using Stripe and you're done. You'll then receive updates in your inbox when significant things happen to that particular charity, many of which include videos of the money that you gave actually being put to work. It's a hugely powerful incentive and always encourages Jess and I to give again because we see the impact of our dollars. I encourage you to check out this very important site. No, I take that back. I challenge you to do it. Currently, there are charities on that site that will help 20 families build vegetable gardens using seeds, bamboo frames, and fertilizer for only $180. There are several charities on the site for only $83 each. Yes, $83 to buy a piglet and feed for families to help them bring in income for their families by pig farming. There's a charity for $400 to feed over 200 street kids in Uganda for an entire month. An entire fucking month for $400. That's insane. There's also one that only has $115 left to fund right now that will pay for a standing frame for a 2-year-old child in Tanzania with cerebral palsy. The standing frame will not only help him learn to stand, but to eventually walk. And there are tons more charities on the site as well, including one to help build a home for a family in Malawi that cares for 11 orphans all themselves. Now, my listeners, you guys are some of the most generous people I've ever had the pleasure to talk to and work with. You guys support this show in such incredible ways, and it is so much appreciated. I really hope that some of you will take the time to check out DonorSee and help with some of these amazing opportunities for need. It would mean a lot to me personally and the people in need if you'd give a few bucks at DonorSee.com. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite secretary, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/99. I have yet another new supporter this week. The Sounds Like Liberty podcast became a huge $5 per episode supporter through Patreon. Holy hell, thanks so much, guys. Sounds Like Liberty is a new Liberty podcast put out by husband and wife team Nikki P. and Lizzie. Show them some love for showing me some love by checking them out at soundslike.libertypodcast.com. So thanks to Nikki P. and Lizzie and all of my other awesome supporters, I am at $291 per episode, or 58.2% of the way towards my next goal of $500 per episode. Thank you for all your support, guys, really. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I will be upping the content I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. I know you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you, so add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve Notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. I also have a new Apple Podcast review this week. Perplexed412 said, "The spot to learn a lot." I love that. Roger Paxton comes with all guns blazing on a complete and thorough message of anarcho-capitalism and voluntarist views on all subjects in the day-to-day. This is an extremely refreshing take on how the state is nothing but a hindrance on everyday people's day-to-day lives, on top of the plethora of crimes it commits without a second thought. Bravo, keep up the excellent work. Wow, Perplexed, that is an awesome, fantastic review. Thanks so much, my friend. So if you have a minute and you want to hear your review on this show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids like Perplexed are doing it. Thank you to everyone who's left me a rating and review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.